Hello, I'm Randy Longenecker, Professor of Family Medicine and Assistant Dean for Rural and Underserved Programs at Ohio University Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine in Athens, Ohio. For the past 5 years, I've also been Associate Project Director for Rural Prep. And I'm here to explain a community-engaged approach to the design and implementation of research in rural health professions education. Rural Prep is a collaboration among departments of family medicine, community medicine, and primary care at 3 institutions: the University of Washington, Ohio University, where I am located, and the University of North Dakota, all built on an existing community of practice and nonprofit cooperative called the RTT Collaborative. Our mission is to improve and sustain rural health through community engagement and research in rural health primary care professions education. Our work is national in scope and not limited to our 3 institutions. We have worked and continue to work with several national partners who share our mission to improve rural health and the rural health workforce. We are the rurally focused participant in a cluster of 6 academic units or centers around the U.S. focused on enhancing primary care training and education, and are funded by HRSA, who we would like to acknowledge. We thank them for their support, but anything we say during this presentation is our own opinion and not that of the federal government. Researchers and non-researchers alike often think of research as the specialized domain of experts. Yet, in the design, implementation, interpretation, and dissemination of scholarly work, a community-engaged approach that draws on multiple perspectives has the potential to lead to better research, more informed researchers, and more relevant findings. We have found this approach particularly important to research in health professions education. The ivory tower, in its attempt at rigor, unfortunately can, as Donald Schoen has said, lead to a lack of relevance. Rural Prep's Design and Dissemination Studio, or DDS, adapts a process originally developed for engaging community members in cancer research in its design, its conduct, and dissemination. And we've adapted it to research in education and training. Our objectives are aligned with those of the Community Engagement Studio in Tennessee, with one exception, and that is to increase the relevance of research to a community of practice in rural primary care health professions education and training, including physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants. The studio is framed around a unique process and minimal structure. We invite 2 researchers to each present a study: a proposed study, a study in process, or a published or soon-to-be-published study. Here are the 2 studies from our most recent studio in January. One, a proposed project from the American Board of Family Medicine on imprinting of costs of care in rural practice. And the second, a study in progress led by a medical student, looking at Google Hangouts as a means of lessening isolation and increasing social support. He had encountered logistical and IRB issues, and the researcher was looking for help in redirecting and continuing the project under new student leadership following his graduation this spring. We recruit a diverse group of stakeholders from a relevant community of practice, or any other defined community that is relevant to rural health and to the studies at hand. Generally, we restrict the total number of participants to 24 or 30, including facilitators, so that the larger group can be divided into 3 or 4 smaller groups. The process requires some coaching of the presenters and a pre-assignment to the studio participants. Since adapting this Cancer Studio process to research and education has taken us to a very different approach to presentations and discussion. Very different from the usual. It is not a matter of the researcher simply showcasing their work, as in a traditional research presentation. The researcher's purpose is to briefly present the participants with just enough information about the study to help them answer a genuine question about how they should proceed in their work. The task for participants is to bring a unique perspective and a critical mind to the work of answering the researcher's question or questions. This is not a research question, but a procedural question. How should I proceed from this point? The studio itself is facilitated over 2.5 hours and begins with introductions to each other and to the process. It's followed by two 55-minute research sessions divided by a 15-minute break, and ends with a time of reflection, evaluation, and feedback. Each research session begins with the researcher's presentation, followed by their question or questions. For a proposed study, perhaps, what are we missing? For a completed study, perhaps, who needs to hear this, and how shall we reach them? There's an opportunity for the participants to ask clarifying questions, and then, following a short time to reflect, the groups go to work answering the question. Here is where a facilitator is very important in keeping the group on task and not following a rabbit trail introduced by an expert researcher in the group, for example, who may not be accustomed to this type of interaction. The facilitator can bring out the perspectives of the non-researchers and students or other learners who may be in the group. The larger group then reconvenes to report out and discuss the recommendations from the smaller groups. All the while, the researchers only listen until in the last 5 minutes they are given a chance to respond as to what they heard and how they plan to proceed. Here is a recap of everyone's respective role. The facilitators are encouraged to contribute sparingly as participant facilitators, and reporters are asked to keep their comments succinct and not a comprehensive rehash of the group's discussion in reporting out to the larger group. By iteratively evaluating our process, we've been able to improve it over time. We have successfully engaged a diverse group of participants, including 20% of them individuals who would not traditionally engage in a research presentation or discussion. Although there may be professional educators and clinicians, there are also students, often from a variety of disciplines. And there are often community members outside healthcare and policy folks. The key is to convene a diverse group and find answers in places other than where the researcher may have been looking. For more details, we encourage you to read the article we published in the November 2020 supplement to the Journal for Healthcare of the Poor and Underserved. Although we started and still believe these events are best implemented in person, we are able, or have been able this past year, through iterative improvement, to successfully adapt to the online environment. And here's a sample of how we may start our session. We use a Zoom breakout meet and greet to start the meeting, so participants get to know their assigned group. These groups have been intentionally diversified and persist through both subsequent research sessions. We've come to thoroughly enjoy this process and hope it continues through our facilitation or that of others. Although the Rural Prep grant is ending this year, the website will live on, and any of us on the Rural Prep leadership team would be happy to take your email, queries, or comments. Here are some references, and there are hyperlinks throughout the presentations that allow you to access other resources as well. Thank you for the opportunity of your time today, and I hope this has been helpful.